TGI Friday, July 30th. Everybody's probably got a mail ballot by now. If not, it's going to be there in the next day or two with the term sheet that was agreed upon with the city. Yes, the mayor finally did give her thumbs up approval, even though these ballots were printed and sent out prior to that. No idea why it took 2 weeks, but anyway, here we are. In that mailer, you will get a term sheet in black print with the explanations in blue. There will also be a yes or no, 100% yes, thumbs up or down, and there will also be a survey for 12-hour schedules. There's an A, B, or C schedule choice. Also, D is no change if you're fine with the way things are. I will be very clear because rumors started right away with this part when it got out. There has never been a discussion about 12-hour shifts from our side or from the cities, period. This is purely informational for the lodge to know and use that information any which way we need going forward, if at all. But it was right now a simple cost savings. It costs anywhere from $40,000 to $50,000 to put these surveys out and have them, mailed, printed, mailed, and then scanned back for whatever the answers are. It was much easier to add one more sheet of paper to this mailer and kind of work off that information from there if we need it going forward. So please, respond both, not just one. We want to know where everybody's at on the 12-hour schedules also. That being said, your ballots have to be back at the post office by August 12th. If not, you're going to have to turn it in or come vote in person Friday morning, August 13th, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. At 10 a.m., that will be it. We will stop taking ballots and we will start counting. If the membership ratifies this offer, City Hall will be notified of the yes vote. It will then trigger a chain of events. It will be referred to the Workforce Committee in City Hall, who will have a committee hearing. They will make a recommendation to the full City Council, which is expected to hear at their first regular scheduled meeting, September 1st. If it gets ratified from there, the agreement is that the new pay schedule would kick in most likely October 1st, and the retro would be paid out sometime about 30 days after there, 45 to 50, no more than 60 days total for that part of it. That's just the process if everything goes smoothly and everything is a yes along the way. If it's not and we go to arbitration, we're looking at a much lengthier process. That's up to the members. I can assure you there was a lot of hard work put into this, and we certainly wouldn't present an offer if we didn't think it was fair. This is absolutely as far as we felt we could get the city to go on phase one. We actually ended up exactly where we were about a year ago, through no fault of the lodge, actually. This was the city's problem. We asked the city a year ago if we can split this up into a simple agreement and worry about the rest of it secondary. They refused, but here we are anyway. Some of the terms: 8 years, 20%, 10.5 retro, 9.5 going forward. Now, many of you think that extra 0.5% is no big deal, but it is a 0.5% better than the fire department. There is also more of a savings that makes it a better deal than the fire department, and that's with healthcare. In 2019, the sergeants signed theirs. They took a 1.5% increase in their healthcare. Fire department last year parlayed that to a 1.5% increase on theirs across the board, single, married, and family. Our goal from the get-go was to have zero liability when it comes to membership financial responsibility for healthcare. So knowing that Philadelphia FOP Lodge 5 several decades ago, with cooperation from the city of Philadelphia, instituted what they call the Law Enforcement Health Benefits, Inc. They facilitate all healthcare for active and retired officers in and around Philadelphia. Their active officers pay zero out of paycheck. All they pay is co-pays. That's all the retirees pay too, is the co-pays. That has always been the end game here. So in order to try and figure out how to bring that to Chicago, last year myself, First Vice President Meddy, and Financial Secretary Jack Stavich flew to Philly. And with the help of Philly 5, they organized a meeting, and we met with the managers of the fund And John walked us through the process of how they do this and how they do it so well for so long. Explaining what we were trying to do and giving him the vision that we had, he kind of explained some suggestions on how we could probably get there over time. We're not kidding anybody here. This is a long haul. It's a lot of work. Lodge 7 has had these discussions in the past. The city is absolutely convinced it cannot be done. We will never achieve it. We're here to try and prove them wrong. We're willing to do the hard work that we know what's going to take to make this a reality. So, what we got the city to agree to was we initially asked for $500,000 a year for health screenings. We were getting $75,000 up to 2017. That stopped in 2018 because the lodge was not producing documentation on where that money was being spent. The rest of the contract provisions carried forward. That was the one that they absolutely stopped. So they did not meet us at the $500,000 mark, but they did agree to give us $300,000 to facilitate these screenings on a much bigger level than we were doing prior. And the goal is absolutely clear, to show that we can save the city money with these screenings so we don't get the full increase that the sergeants and fire department got in their contracts. So January 1st of next year, we will get a 0.75% increase in our healthcare contributions. The second 0.75% is frozen until January 1st of 2024. If we meet the agreed upon terms of what constitutes a savings, that second 3/4 never kicks in. If we do not, it does. It's an automatic kick in. If there's a disagreement on whether we met the terms or not, it still kicks in, but we go to grievance and arbitration where an arbitrator will decide, did we meet the threshold or not? If the arbitrator says we did, it reverts back to the original 0.75% increase, and you will be refunded all extra money taken out of your paycheck starting from January of 24. The goal is not by the end of this contract, but hopefully by the end of the successor agreement, we will have a Philly-like model here in Chicago where active officers will be paying zero out of pocket except for copays, along with the retirees who, thanks to Rahm Emanuel, were screwed across the whole city, not just the police department. But that's always been the aim of this administration, and we want to transform what city healthcare looks like for all the unions and lead the way. So that being said, it was kind of a trade-off. We knew we could do better with money, but we decided to stick to base pay right now, knowing there was going to be more financial matters in phase 2. What we agreed upon with the city was this: the remaining issues that are not part of these 10 terms will be discussed immediately upon ratification, or if it gets shot down. Either way, when we have an answer, we will then go on to what's left, and by December 1st, everything or the remaining issues alone, if we get a yes vote, will be sent off to arbitration that didn't get agreed upon. In that second phase, there are more discussions about money, and specifically parity, similar to the fire department, that has different category title codes and bumps in pay for all kinds of certifications. The police department does not have such parity. That is our goal in phase 2. So even though I know a lot of people are complaining about the rate of inflation and that we're only looking at 2.5% the next 3 years, we firmly believe that 2.5% can incrementally climb up depending on how many certifications you have and what we get done in phase 2. That will be determined at a later date. But I just want to be very clear. The 2.5% is simply the basement. We absolutely expect to get some bumps in pay, or at least the option for bumps in pay for all of our officers, whether it's LEMART, CIT, rifle, bicycle, Narcan, whatever you're certified in, SWAT, lead homicide investigator, for detectives. There's a myriad of different things we can add into the mix and get parity with the fire department. They have a Me Too clause. We don't. This is as close to a Me Too clause as we can get. It's just simple parity. So that's those two things. The one provision that we were not happy with, but it was a bitter pill we had to swallow because of our long-term goal, we said okay, of having a Philly-like model, and that's the increase for your salary cap. It's term number 7. That is not a salary cap on your pay. That is a salary cap on your base pay where your healthcare contributions are being deducted towards. So it really doesn't apply to Lodge 7 members. Realistically, there might be some 25-year detectives at the end of this term that would be close to that base pay. But other than that, again, it's pretty much 100. You're going to 100% of your base pay is going to be subjected to that healthcare contribution for now, with the long-term goal being it gets undone over time between the next contract. A couple other simple provisions, and I'm not going to go into actually detail after detail after detail. I will tell you that we've been doing roll call all week. We will continue to do them through the weekend and into next week too, all the way through next weekend. Myself, First Vice President Mike Meddy, and Second Vice President Dan Gorman are doing these roll calls, so the message is simple, concise, and even across the board. We're trying to make it to we will make it to every district at least once, some districts twice, just for sheer numbers sake. We're focusing mostly on third watch. We're mixing in first and second watch where we can. We did 2 of the area detective units already. We will be doing Lollapalooza roll calls this weekend. So we'll be able to get into much deeper depth in the actual agreement. I will tell you this. The reason we came to this financial package is very simple. It is our firm belief that this city is more broke than it probably has ever been before. It has been poorly managed, and it has definitely been hedging its bets on a federal bailout, which it got. But that $1.9 billion cannot go for retro pay for our salaries. So once that money is gone, and we all know it's going to be burned through like crazy on every other nonsensical item that this city can come up with, and every alderman's going to have their hand out. But once that money's gone, we then will be back to our usual funding, and that is our usual taxes, whether it's property taxes, sale taxes, etc., that everything pays for our salaries. One of the biggest, loudest arguments is, what about the teachers? The teachers got everything, we get shit. Well, the teachers' funding is very different. The teachers get funding from the federal government and the state government. It's not fair. That's just the pool they have to work with. They got $9 billion to play with. Ours is under about 1.5. So we're dealing with the cards that were dealt. That being said, I'm trying to think. Accountability issues, I will touch on this one. One of the sticking points for accountability issues was the term city's investigatory agency. The city did not want to define what those agencies would be, whether it's BIA, COPA, or Inspector General. They wanted the vagueness in there for whatever reason. They implied that it was because COPA is not in the current contract, and that was an issue before, that we would challenge all the COPA discipline because it refers to HIPAA in our contract. The understanding there is very clear. If any of those 3 entities change their name in the future and become something else, then we will simply get a 60-day notice from the city. If they increase the scope of their investigatory abilities, they have to come to the lodge and negotiate. It's really that simple. It took a lot of back and forth and wasted hours on just that simple phraseology and where to go from there. The approach, lastly, of the contract team was to have something fair for everybody, a little something for the young officers and a little something for the older. In our campaign, we were absolutely crystal clear that there were some things we were going to fight for. One of them was duty availability for the younger officers who got screwed in the last contract. I can tell you that duty availability going forward would be at 18 months. It is also retroactive back to July 1st of 2017. That means many young officers will be getting an extra $7,800 on top of the retro check for that duty availability. They should have never been out to begin with. We tried to get it all the way back to day one. That wasn't going to happen, so we settled on upon completion of probation. Trying to live up to that promise. The older officers, there's 2 issues, and one of them actually piggybacks young and old, and that's retention. This department has a serious manpower issue. We know of at least 22 officers in over 5 different departments that were Tier 2 officers who left to go somewhere else in the last 12 months. And that's without really even asking. I'm sure the number is much higher than that. But the point being, retention for this department from both ends, young and old, is a major issue. That was largely how we sold the duty availability thing and given the younger officers an incentive to stay. The older ones, the incentive for that was very simple. If officers are leaving the first chance they get at 55 with health care, we know that there's even officers not waiting till 55 anymore. They're leaving and being willing to pay out of their own pocket, get on their spouse's health care, whatever the case may be. So in order to try and address the veteran officers from leaving at 55, first chance they get, our offer was to lift residency at the step 10, 25-year mark and let officers begin phase 2 of their life while they continue to be a CPD officer and continue to pass on their knowledge to the younger generation for another 3, 5, or up to 8 years before they were mandatorily retired. That was the suggestion. It wasn't met very warm, but we're certainly not letting go of that bone, because residency was also something we talked about in our campaign. Residency is going to become a very prominent issue going forward, with the fact that they cannot get anybody to take this job. They need to do everything they can to incentivize officers to stay and to start recruiting officers to come here from all over the place, because everybody is experiencing a shortage of law enforcement applications. And the competition's only going to get fiercer. The only way you can compete with other municipalities is by giving better packages. And one of the biggest drawbacks to CPD is the residency requirement. I really hope the city takes this seriously going forward. It's not an issue we're going to let go. But we'd love to let everybody leave at 20 years with health care. It's impossible. If 2,000 officers left, we'd be crushed, the pension would be trashed, and everybody would be screwed. So our focus was on people that are maxed out 29 in a day. What could we do to give them the ability to leave? So we roughly calculate it's about 300 officers that are affected by that 29 in and out right now, less than 55. Now, these are arguments that we know the sergeants, lieutenants, and captains have had with the city in negotiations, and the city has refused to come up with a health care option for those maxed out officers. We were told that the captains even said name a number, and the city still refused to name a number. Well, I came with a different approach, and what we explained to the city was this, using general numbers. They kept saying that it was not a healthcare savings or even a liability savings to the city long term. And we're complaining about the 55 and out option right now being a $40 billion long term liability. And there's certainly no way they were going to increase the ability for officers to leave. So my argument was this: if a 53-year-old officer making a $100,000 pension, now I know that's more of a lieutenant's pension, but just for argument's sake, it was easier to digest these numbers. And by the way, sergeants and fire, their health care or retiree health care is going up, or went up from 2% at 55 to 3.5% at 60, from 0 to 1.5. We will be there too. The city initially wanted to push that to January 1st of next year. We got them to push that back 6 months, allowing officers this year to file for retirement next year under the old numbers, as long as they leave prior to July 1st. But knowing that we're going to that 3.5% number, my argument for that 53-year-old officer with a $100,000 pension was, just for argument's sake, let's say that officer was willing to pay 7% for his health care. And if he was, he'd now be paying $7,000 a year for 12 years till he was Medicaid eligible at 65. That's $84,000. That same officer stays another 2 years, and now he pays $3,500 for 10 years. You would be getting $50,000 more in healthcare contributions from that one officer if you let him leave early because he's 29 in a day maxed out. How does that not translate to a savings to the city? And it gives them the ability to hire 1.6 new officers for every one officer maxed out leaving. We were pretty late in negotiations at that point. I think that was one of the simple things that resounded with the negotiating team. The light bulb kind of went off, but it was just too deep of a dive at that point. So that's going to be another phase 2 topic. There is a ton of phase 2 issues to address, including the cancellation of days off, compensation for such, even holidays. Again, we'll go deeper into that in roll calls. But all I can tell you is we will be in roll calls explaining it more. Turn in a ballot. If we have a big turnout in phase 1 with this ballot, we can literally use that number to show the city that the membership is seriously engaged in where we're at and what we're trying to do. And it will help make an argument in phase 2 going forward. That's about all I'm going to add right now. 2 social notes. Tomorrow there is a Back to Blue ride to remember. there is a link, or not a link, there's a post on our Facebook page and mine. Feel free to look at it and decide if you ride. It's not just motorcycles, cars, vans, Jeeps. There's 4 different locations we're going to be leaving from, converging at the Villa Park Harley Davidson at noon, where there will be a giant Back to Blue rally. Also, Wednesday night at Impact Field in Rosemont, there will be a baseball game. Our baseball team, the Finest, will be playing their alumni, and we'll be honoring the FOP and the guy who brought labor to Chicago, our past president, John Deneen. He will be throwing out the first pitch. It'll be a family fun event. Please consider coming out. Tickets are only $10. You can get them on Eventbrite. We're trying to pack the stadium and give John a good memory and thank you for everything he did to help bring labor to this city. That being said, have a safe day and watch your back. Oh yeah, one more thing, sorry. On our homepage website, there's a little blue box on the bottom right corner. Click on that link. It has a retro calculator. It also has the new pay schedule, should this get approved, on what you'd be looking at pay-wise. It also has all the accountability issues. The old language is in black, lined out, new language in red. Take a look at it. Don't just vote on the money. Vote on the changes and look at what you're voting on. That was it.